Christy was sure that when Nona knew all that had happened, she would give her full support to whatever course her niece decided to follow. There'd be no need to struggle any more, because she knew what that course must be. Of course, Lily had always hoped that the miraculous gift her Hungarian mother had possessed would manifest itself in her daughter. When the first hint of it had appeared in the year when Christy was 5, Lily had been tremendously pleased and excited. From the first, however, Christy had hated the gift and wanted only to reject it. She'd always disliked the name she'd been given at birth, Crystal, a name her mother still used. Crystals were a part of Lily's life, not Christy's. She would never forget that first searing flash of premonition that had warned her about her darling Puddles. She had seen with horrible clarity the moment when the little poodle had been struck by a car, and she knew exactly where it had happened. Her mother listened to every tearful word and drove her to the blind curve that Christy's vision indicated. Even as Lily tried to comfort her daughter, she had exclaimed over this evidence that the family talent had reached into another generation. But why, Christy wailed, why couldn't she have seen ahead of time what was going to happen so that Puddles could have been saved? For years after, her doubtful gift had let her alone, and she had tried to block out any thought of it. She had found work that pleased and satisfied her. Although she had no brothers or sisters, since Lily was too busy to raise a family and was usually between husbands anyway, Christy grew up loving children. She had a special sympathy for the small ones, and since she loved books as well, Nona had seen to that, it had seemed natural to combine the two and become someone who put books into the hands of children. The library she worked for on Long Island discovered that she was especially good at telling stories to groups of the very young. Her own small person never overwhelmed them, and they loved the way her brown eyes would widen dramatically, loved the feathery tricks her eyebrows played to make them laugh. A wide mouth that she'd always thought too big helped because it was expressive, and her voice was soft but very clear, and filled with cadences that seemed to hold and entrance a young audience. Of course, all the marvelous children's books at the library gave her ammunition. For Christy, words always came first, and she loved to say them aloud, so her listeners could relish the author's language. The library system quickly recognized her special magic, and she'd been sent around to tell stories wherever small children gathered to listen. The work had been satisfying, and she didn't mind in the least that her mother thought it was all a waste of the real talent she should have been developing. Christy had been delighted when Nona, using the name of Harmony, did the illustrations for a favorite recent picture book by Rose Vaughan, entitled The Little Red Road. The author, a close friend of Nona's, had died recently, and Christy felt sad because there would be no more wonderful Nona-illustrated stories from her pen. Charlottesville was behind her, and the 4-lane highway that rose into the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains led closer to the turnoff. Now the hills were an irregular, wooded jumble all around, and she liked the surprise views that appeared at every turn. Nona had explained that after Christy left the main road she must look for a Baptist church sign and then a green dumpster that would mark the gravel road winding through the hills to the small community called Redlands, where Nona had built her home 2 years ago. Christy had wanted to visit her aunt before this, but it had never worked out. Not until this last disaster had struck did she know that she must disappear, escape, sever all ties with terrible recent events. She was thankful that Nona didn't ask her to explain over the phone. Her library director had seen Christy's need and let her go immediately and without question. She had understood what was happening and simply cut the red tape. This woman was the one friend who knew where Christy had gone, and she would never give her away. Whether it would ever be possible to return to Long Island was a decision for the future, perhaps when she had healed a little and recovered her equilibrium. For now she must be away from any settled area where violence was prevalent and her clairvoyance all too active. At Redlands there would be nothing to awaken it, and she could let her awful experiences flow away into the past. The Virginia foothills of the Blue Ridge would be peaceful, quiet. She knew from her aunt that only a handful of families had been drawn together here by the beauty of the Redlands area and a desire to be away from cities. Though they came from different places, they were bound by a common affection for the beauty of the land.